Hi, greetings and good evening, and welcome to the Tabia Pope Show. I am your host, Tabia Pope. I am a certified speech language pathologist, as well as a personal and corporate speech and image consultant. This evening, I have Miss Katie Schwartz. She is also a speech language pathologist and corporate speech consultant. So thank you so much, Katie, for being on the show this evening.
You're welcome. It's a
Thank
pleasure.
Thank you. I just wanted to let all our thank all of our audience and viewers this evening for watching the third episode of the Tabia Pope Show. The Tabia Pope Show is an image management talk show, and it's focused on educating and empowering viewers to enhance their communication skills, image, and lifestyle. The show covers the science and art of how to manage your personal brand as well as your professional image. The Tabia Pope Show aims at being a catalyst for personal and professional transformations. And when watching the Tabia Pope Show, I really want my audience to come with the expectation that you need to reflect on your own communication skills, image, and lifestyle, and really want to help you with maintaining and managing your personal brand. So one of the discussion questions that I have this evening is, are you self-conscious about your verbal image? And that's what we're talking about this evening. We're talking about verbal image with Katie Schwartz, and so let's just get into the interview. Katie Schwartz is an owner and operates a business speech improvement, and she provides intensive coaching in a variety of business communication skills. This includes foreign and regional accent modification, presentation skills, speech rate reduction, executive communication skills, diction training for native speakers, and so much more. She is the founder and president of Corporate Speech Pathology Network, an international group of speech professionals. She holds a master's degree from Vanderbilt University and is the author of 4 widely read books. And she also has 8 concise ebooks available on her website, businessspeechimprovement.com. She is also the recipient of the Unsung Heroes Award from the American Speech Language Hearing Association. She has been quoted in prestigious publications such as the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Asha Leader, and Advanced News Magazine for speech language pathologists and audiologists. Her latest issue of her blog, The Verbal Image, can be accessed through her website, and she has an archive of almost 400 articles, and they are excellent. So if you are looking to improve your business communication skills, her website is an excellent resource for you. She's located in Durham, North Carolina, and I love her tagline. It is, "Great speech makes sense." That is excellent because your business communication skills definitely impacts your bottom line, especially when you're a professional, an entrepreneur, as well as a corporation looking to enhance your employees' business communication. So before we go into the interview, I just want to let our audience know that you can reach me on social media at tabiapopeshow.com, and I will be posting more discussion questions on our Facebook page as well. You can use the hashtag #ImageManagementTalk and hashtag #AskTabia. So, Katie, I just want to have you just talk about a little bit about the research that I found on your blog. I thought that these percentages were quite alarming when we talk about research and our first impressions and the role that communication plays within our image. So you're saying that you found research that shows that 93% of the first impression is nonverbal, but it's based on factors such as your tone of voice, rate of speaking, dress, facial expressions, and etc. But you're saying that it's only 7% of the first impression is based on words alone. That's very interesting.
Yes, a gentleman by the name of Albert Melrabian discovered this in the 1960s, and the words that we use are important, but everything else is also important. For example, are you enthusiastic or are you monotonal? Are you excited about what you're talking about? Do you look like you're interested? All of those have an impression to make.
And that's interesting. And among American adults, you're saying that at least you found one study on your blog that talked about the fear of public speaking, and they're saying that the fear of public speaking is greater than the fear of death for Americans. Public speaking is a skill that can be learned and improved with practice and coaching, in which you do as well as I do, and helping our clients really improve their public speaking and overcome that fear of public speaking. So can you talk a little bit about that article that you found that talked about the fear of public speaking?
Yes, they felt that, as you said, that for American adults, this one study showed that the fear of public speaking is greater than the fear of dying. And the fear of public speaking extends not only to giving a speech, but to talking in departmental meetings. So if you run a department and you have a couple of employees who routinely do not talk during meetings, you might want to find out why, if they feel that there's a need for them to talk, if they're willing to share their knowledge in some other way besides public speaking until they can become more accustomed to it.
That's very interesting. So if I was a corporation or an executive, and a lot of times there are also human resource professionals that are involved in making the decisions for professional development within their company. And if I was that professional and I was going to you looking for advice, and I asked you this question coming from that perspective, so how can I approach an employee to offer some help with his or her communication skills? So I know that a lot of those types of professionals, human resource professionals, would ask you that question. So how, and going about approaching employees can be a very tricky, you want to make sure that you're not offending your employee in any way, but you also want to enhance their skills if it's needed.
The best way to do it is to take one of two tactics. The first is to offer this coaching to anybody in the company who wants it, as part of a general plan of courses that an employee can take, and see if the employee in question does take it. The second way to do it is to be more direct, to take the employee and explain that because the employee is valuable to the company and you're concerned about their career development, this is an option that they might want to consider. In addition, Americans feel very hesitant to offer such coaching to individuals because, as you said, they're fear of offending them. But if you have employees from other countries who are part of your company, they expect the company to do it because that is their experience in many other countries rather. So we have the employee who expects it and the supervisor who's very hesitant about offering it. So if you're the supervisor, consider that the employee may be waiting for somebody to offer help, and it might not be as scary as you think.
And so how have you've gone into corporations and you've worked with employees, have you worked with employees on site, actually at the company?
Yes, most of the time I do work with people on site.
And how do they, are they kind of ashamed, or are their coworkers knowing that they're working on enhancing their skills? Do you find it more of a morale, builds morale, and it builds everyone's confidence that they're becoming a better employee? How do you see their feelings towards them enhancing their skills within the workplace?
Training is a fact of life in most American companies. And employees simply tell their colleagues they're going for training. They don't discuss what. But the employees themselves tell me that they're very relieved and excited to have this opportunity. So they see it as a positive.
Good. And I really want to hone in on that it is a positive thing to enhance your communication skills, your image, and your lifestyle. It really impacts your bottom line, and it's going to help you move up or climb the corporate ladder, or position yourself as that personal brand within your field, the go-to person, because everyone wants to see a professional continuously developing their skills. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And then about public speaking. So we talked about public speaking a little earlier, but if I was a person that had a fear of public speaking, what would you recommend them? How could they become more of an effective presenter? What are some tips that you could give that person that had that idea of, maybe I do need to learn how to become a better public speaker?
The first thing I would suggest is that you figure out why you're scared about it. I've taught classes in public speaking at a university, and I found that the reasons are pretty diverse. We have some people who say, I don't like people looking at me, to others who say, I don't know how to pronounce a particular word, to somebody else who says, I'm not very persuasive. So you need to figure out what your reason is. Beyond that, you also need practice, and you need preparation, and you need passion for your subject. Find a subject that really is important to you and that you can get excited about. Then prepare a lot more than you think you're going to need. Prepare.
How long? I'm sorry to cut you off, but how long do you recommend a person practice their speech? Because I say that it could take a month or so or even recording yourself and looking into the mirror and working on your mannerisms, because body language has a lot to do with our nonverbal. Our language communication has a lot to do with how the audience is drawn into what we're saying. So what would you recommend that length of time they practice?
I recommend you practice and practice and practice until you could practically say it in your sleep. But I don't suggest that you practice it word for word. I suggest you practice the keywords. Figure out what your keywords are, and then mentally link one keyword to the next keyword with an image. Because if you practice it word for word and you forget a word, then you're likely to have difficulty through the rest of the speech. But if you practice it keyword by keyword, then you're going to be more successful if you forget a word.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So practice it until it's automatic.
Until it's automatic. Do you suggest that the person who is learning and practicing, do you suggest them use someone to help them, someone else, and practice with another person, or do you suggest the mirror approach like I use? Do you suggest them use anyone at all to help them?
I suggest we start with a mirror and some kind of recording device, whether it's a computer, an old-fashioned tape recorder, or something else. And then I suggest you go in front of family and friends and see if you can also visualize yourself in an auditorium similar to whatever you're going to be speaking in. So that you're practicing in all of these situations. Before you start practicing each time, visualize yourself succeeding. Whatever success feels like to you, whether it's the audience clapping or you're walking out of the door with excitement because you did a great job.
And on your blog, the Verbal Image blog, you also talked about your new article was presenters, are you making these two critical mistakes in your presentations? And you pointed out a very good point, that you were talking about how you were at a corporate seminar and there were two presenters, and one of the presenters was asking the audience, can you hear me? And you brought in the point that your audience, there may be a person in your audience that may have a hearing loss. And I don't know if our audience knows, but the American Speech Language Hearing Association is celebrating Better Hearing and Speech Month. And I thought this article was excellent as tying the two disciplines together, because as a presenter, you do need to think about your audience's needs. So is there a person in the audience that has a hearing loss? How do I effectively communicate and make sure that everyone in my audience is following along with the very key important points that I want to point out? Can you give me some of those tips that you stated in your article, because it was a very good article?
One of the suggestions was that the people who are speaking need to use a microphone. This is especially important if you're talking to more than 20 people, or if you're going to have high ceilings. Or the third reason might be if you have people who are in their 60s or older, or people in their 20s. For the first time in history, there's been an increased number of people in their 20s who have hearing loss, and they're just at the start of their work and career. And the reason for this is that we believe that's due to the earbuds pushing sound 6 to 7 decibels closer to the inner ear and killing the inner ear hair cells. Right now, there is no way to revive those cells. So once they're dead, which means that earbuds need to be, if you're going to use them, they need to be at a soft level and for a limited period of time. But in terms of public speaking, you need to assume that there are people in your audience who have a hearing loss, and you need to use that mic. And once you use the mic, it should be no further than 1 hand span from your mouth. It should not be far away, because then it won't be as effective.
That's an excellent point. You also talked about repeating any questions or comments from the audience before answering them. Can you expand upon that point?
Yes, oftentimes the questioners are looking forward, looking ahead, and talking to the speaker. But people in the back of the room might not be able to hear. In fact, it's really common that people in the back of the room can't hear, whether it's because of the distance or the fact that their neighbor is whispering something. So a speaker needs to repeat the question, both to make sure he understands it clearly and that the audience knows what their question is.
That's excellent. And then can we talk about just a little bit about the PowerPoint itself? Because I know I've learned that a PowerPoint should not include your whole presentation. It should just be very visual. It should only have a couple of points on each slide. Each main point that you're trying to speak about should only be maybe like no more than 3 slides. You should not have lengthy slides with all of this text, because it's hard for your audience to follow along, and you're constantly having to, like you said, move away from the microphone, or your body language is now directed towards the screen or the computer, and you're no longer engaging with the audience. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. The PowerPoint slide, each slide should have no more than 7 lines on it, and that should not be complete lines. It should be, again, key words. If you put too much on it and the font is too small, people cannot see it. And as you pointed out, it makes it even worse if the presenter turns to look at the PowerPoint, because in many cases, his voice won't be caught on the microphone. There are 2 kinds of microphones, and the unidirectional one only works if you speak directly into it. So if you have a PowerPoint slide, to avoid looking at it, make copies of it ahead of time and put it down in front of you, so you remain facing that microphone.
Excellent. Do you also recommend handouts or visuals within our PowerPoint presentation? How do you feel that does it enhance your presentation, or does it kind of hinder your presentation?
I like to combine the two, and the way I combine it, though, is after the presentation, then I might give out a handout with a couple of practical takeaways that somebody can do. So during the presentation, they're focused on the PowerPoint and on me as the speaker, and afterwards they have a way to review the information and also simultaneously to get in touch with me if they have questions afterwards.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for giving us tips on public speaking, because those are so needed, so needed. Just to go on to another question. So if I was a professional that was having difficulty with my speech rate, I spoke very fast, and there were people, my coworkers or my family members, that were having difficulty understanding me. I wasn't getting my point across, especially in interviews. I was having difficulty, and people were always telling me to slow down. How can I learn to speak slower, and how can I adjust my communication style?
First, you need to think about the reason you want to slow down. Make sure it's important to you, because it's not easy to do this. People speak fast for a variety of reasons. In some cases, it's their culture. For example, people in New York City routinely speak faster than people in the Deep South. And other times, it's a custom in certain countries to talk quickly if you want to impress somebody. And so you need to think about why you speak fast. Then go to a speech pathologist, because there's also a kind of speech disorder called cluttering. But if you want to try it on your own first, you need to start by tapping out a slow pace, a very slow cadence, kind of like this, and start by counting to 10 at that cadence, and then go to saying your telephone number, one number at a time, like 1, 2, 3, so that you can go slow enough for somebody else to understand you. Realize that if you're giving out your telephone number on the phone, somebody else has to write it down. If you talk faster than they can write, they're going to get it wrong. And go from there. Slowly start saying sentences, and slowly start reading something that doesn't matter to you, like the back of a cereal box. But if those things aren't effective, or aren't effective fast enough, then you may need professional help to work on this issue.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the disorders? You talked about cluttering. There's also stuttering. Can you talk a little bit about some of the communication disorders that may impact that would need a professional such as a speech pathologist that would help with reducing their speech rate?
One of them is Parkinson's, because one of the first signs of it may be a suddenly increased rate of speech. But Parkinson's and certain other neurological disorders, as well as cluttering, which is a fluency disorder, are the most common issues if it's going to be a medical cause. Most of the people I've worked with in my experience, though, do not have medical causes. It's more of a cultural issue.
Interesting. What are some of the cultures that you find that are having difficulty with their reduced speech rate?
Well, the fast ones, and most commonly, is places like New York City. Mm-hmm. Some people from other countries like India may speak very quickly as well. Many people from other countries want to speak English as fast as they speak their native language. And that causes problems, because the listener has to become used to that particular accent. So people from other countries need to start out by speaking more slowly.
Mm-hmm. Well, can we also let's know now that we're on culture, because I know accent or dialect modification is very needed, especially in our country, since we are a melting pot of cultures. Can you talk about a little bit about your experience with accent modification, and if I was to come to you as, say, someone who wanted to work on my accent or dialect, what advice would you give them?
Well, accent modification involves 3 particular angles. The first is the rate of speech. Again, how fast does somebody speak? Does it need to be slowed down so they can learn to talk differently? The second is pronunciation of different sounds. For example, English is the only language where we have a TH sound. And people from other countries pronounce TH in various ways, such as T or an S sound. and don't realize it's not the same sound. The third is intonation, how your voice goes up and down. And that's going to be the last thing to work on. Many people will have trouble with that, or it's not that important to them. If their goal is only to be clearly understood, then we usually don't worry as much about the intonation. But your question on this is very timely, because I believe it's May 27th is the first day that the government is going to be accepting applications from spouses who hold the H-4 visa, so that spouses of internationals can start to work in this country. And they're expecting 179,000 people to apply for these. It's going to be incredible. So many people are interested in this.
And it should be, because it also can impact your dialect. I always say your dialect. When we talk about, okay, so we talk about regional dialect and we talk about foreign accent, right?
Right.
And a lot of people like the Southern dialect, right, or the African American dialect, differs from the Southern, differs from the standard American English, which is based on a Midwestern dialect. And so you have people that are applying for jobs and are going out for interviews, and their do you find that their dialect kind of hinders them, their employability? What is your experience with actual dialect, whether it be a Southern dialect or African American dialect, compared to the standard American English?
Well, it can cause a real problem. There have been some studies on this that have been very interesting. A speech pathologist by the name of Bernadette Anderson studied this in Chicago, and she asked Chicago supervisors to rate Chicago applicants just on the basis of their voice samples. And she found that those who had a strong regional dialect, a Chicago dialect, rated less well on applications for jobs than people who had a standard American one. The question is really how well can they communicate. And if there's any issue with communication, whether it's idioms or pronunciation, then that's going to be a problem with business.
Right. And can you explain what are idioms? Because I don't know if our viewers know what any idioms are and how they can impact our speech.
All right. Well, one idiom would be mash the light, which means in Tennessee talk, it means to turn off the light. Or put it up, which means to put things up high. I used to live in Tennessee, and those were two that caught my attention immediately. Mm-hmm. So expressions, local expressions, where people understand it locally to mean one thing, and people elsewhere might not understand it or might understand it wrong. Bless your heart is another one.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you for clarifying that, just for the audience. So that, I think that's excellent points that we talked about. Culture can impact our communication. Our fear of public speaking can impact reducing our speech rate is also very important for communication. Now let's also talk about communication style, because when we're in the workforce, everyone has different communication styles. Some people are introverts, extroverts, and that also plays into our personality type, and it is a direct link between how we communicate as well. So if I was an employee and I was a person who rambled my words and I wasn't able to get straight to the point, or if I was a woman who wanted a more authoritative voice, or wanted, I wasn't being heard in my business meetings, and I wanted more of that authoritative voice. What is some of your advice for someone that wanted to work on their communication style?
That's definitely possible. For the first one, we have people who are inductive and people who are deductive speakers. The inductive speakers give all the reasons, and then they ask for the action. The deductive ones, which is most of us, ask for the action and then explain why. And when you have one who is the supervisor and one who is the supervisee, it can cause problems. So usually the inductive speaker has to learn to state his main point, and then give the reasons. And for some of them, this can be very difficult after a lifetime of doing it the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So they need coaching in how to do that and practice before they can do this successfully on the fly. In terms of the woman who wants to be more authoritative and to have her opinions heard in meetings and acknowledged as her opinions, she needs to find ways to do that. For example, if she is presenting an idea to her group, before the meeting, she needs to find the most respected member of that group, share the idea with the person, and ask how the idea can be improved. And then ever after, not refer to it as my idea, but talk about it as our idea or the idea. That would be one way. Another way to improve would be to talk, to share an opinion without saying just. I just wanted to ask. Simply say, this is important, I wanted to ask. To be more authoritative, you need to sound like the men in how they phrase things.
Mm-hmm. And are there any other communication, I guess, employees or professionals that communication styles that we didn't touch on that you've seen in your practice?
I've seen a lot of different ones. For example, the supervisor who always sounds very brusque and angry and wonders why nobody likes her. That would be one of them. I've seen people who are very hesitant. As supervisors, they were great as employees, but couldn't make the transition to supervisory roles and didn't know how to sound authoritative, and a variety of other ones. It's been very interesting to see all the different communication issues. There are a lot of variety.
They are, and I think that really impacts how we communicate and how we express our ideas, and when also goes back to working on listening, our listening skills as well. That's a big one in the business world, being able to listen before you are trying to formulate your own response. I think that if we begin to listen to each other, that would also help us get to our business goals as well faster, and also our influencing skills, especially when you're talking about sales professionals. And I know you had an article on your blog, the Verbal Image blog, that talked about the importance of customer service, and that link that you made between the importance of communication and customer service and being a salesperson. And what were some of those tips that you found that would help a salesperson with their communication style?
The first tip is to be sure to ask enough questions. You wouldn't want a doctor to diagnose you on the basis of one short phrase. And so as a salesperson, you need to ask questions like, what size would suit you better, or what style or what features do you want? What is more important, price or style, depending on, obviously, on your product. So you need to make sure you know what the person is really looking for, and then choose just the right thing or the closest that you have for them. And if you have nothing at all that would suit this person, don't hesitate to refer them to somewhere else that would be more suitable, because the customer will remember that you really tried to help.
And you also talked about knowing the details of your product. You said that you gave an example of a salesperson that was trying to sell to you, and can you talk a little bit about that, how they were trying to sell to you and they didn't really understand the product? They were just able to give really generic responses about the product, and that is a bad reflection on the company, because that person is a brand ambassador to the company, and now you have not been able to explain the product properly, so now you've lost the customer.
Right. Not only did they lose the customer for that time, but they lost me as a customer for future times, because I didn't trust that they knew what I wanted. They didn't know their own products well enough in that case.
So, you also, I'm sorry.
That's all right. For me and for other people, you want to make sure that they understand what the products are and know them very well.
And I thought this was a very interesting point that you made on your blog as well. You talked about answer machines was another key to communication within the workforce. And can you talk a little bit about how answer machines, and you also talked about, trying to think, you also talked about your front line's verbal image and how that plays as well in the workforce. Can you talk a little bit about how an answer machine can, or responding to emails? You also talked about responding to emails and business correspondence can also be very important. Communication responses, how that can impact in the corporate world.
Absolutely. First impressions really count. When you have your front line, whoever it is, your receptionist or whoever answers the phone in each department, they need to answer it clearly so that the customer or whoever, the vendor, understands immediately what department was reached, and the person needs to sound excited and happy that you've called. It's an automatic response, and you can train yourself to do it, to answer the phone cheerfully every single time. When you're leaving a message, an outgoing message on an answering machine, you want to leave it very slowly and clearly. Interesting things happen when you do that. Unconsciously, the people who call you and leave you a message then will speak slowly, which means you might only have to listen to it once instead of going back 2 or 3 times for details. So if you leave a great outgoing message, incoming messages will also be easier for you. In terms of written correspondence, try to do it as quickly as possible because people want answers to the questions that they have posed.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent points. And you also want to be able to discuss the key I guess, executives or key professionals in your organization. You want to be able to discuss their responsibilities and who they are to the company, and because you want to be able to sound knowledgeable of who the company is truly and who is at the core of that company.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that that is clear to the customer.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, let's talk about a little bit about executive presence, because if I was an employee and I felt like the executive in my company was not communicating well with me, or if I was the executive and I felt that my employees say I don't communicate well with them, then there's a problem, right? And that that goes into impacting your leadership skills, and you're not being effective as that managerial communication is not being effective, and research has shown that this is a reason why people quit their jobs, is because their executive in their company is not communicating well with them, and they feel like they are not, their ideas are not being heard, or they feel like they're being put down. How do you feel that executives can manage their communication skills effectively?
One way is to be noticing what employees do well and making sure that they comment on it to an employee with thank you notes. Written thank you notes are the most powerful, and they're a free form of recognition. To send a note to an employee and put it in his personnel file saying, I noticed that you did a great job on this particular report today. This had quite an impact on getting the business that we needed. Thank you for the extra time you put in. Those kinds of things make a difference. People work for more than just money. They work for recognition, that they are being a valuable help to the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so simply saying that to somebody is really important.
It is. They want to hear that they're valued. They want to be in a business meeting, and they want their ideas heard, and they want to be able to own their ideas as well. So as an executive, you want to make sure that your communication style is not negative. You're communicating with your employees, and you're giving them opportunities to do all those things that we just talked about. Are there any other tips that you want to tell our audience? I know that on your blog you had the top 5 tips to improve your speech. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to tell our audience this evening?
Well, just consider that the message is very important. So you need to think about the message and your listener's needs. Combine the two and you can be very persuasive as a communicator. Business speech makes a difference. And it can be improved.
Well, thank you so much, Miss Katie Schwartz. Thank you so much for being on the Tabia Pope Show this evening. Can you just let our audience know how to reach you again? www.businessspeechimprovement.com. Thank you so much. And if you want to reach me, you can reach me on social media. You can go to @tabiapopeshow.com, and that's on its way, or you can go on social media @tabiapopeshow. Like I said before, I'm going to post some discussion questions on our Facebook page and on Twitter as well. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have more episodes coming on how to enhance your communication skills, image, and lifestyle.